Brought to you by NelsonCorp Wealth Management. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Any indices mentioned are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Registered representative, securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated. A registered investment advisor, Cambridge and NelsonCorp Wealth Management are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax advice. Now here's today's Financial Focus program.
Well, it is the first Wednesday, so Dave Nelson in studio with me. Of course, we always begin things with a little small talk.
Yeah.
Brian Peterson, of course, your nephew.
Sure.
Big-time Division I basketball coach now. How's he doing?
He's doing great. We're going to see him. Dad's turning 90, so we're going to have a party for him on his birthday here coming up in right about a month. And so Brian will be back as far as for that. And he's been really busy. It's a different world now for those that aren't aware. But in the past, when you got a good athlete as far as recruited and they came to your school, there was a good chance they were going to stay, the entire time as far as that school. And now, boy, it's just chaos as far as people jumping from place to place. I think to drive home the point, it sounds like Deion Sanders, as far as in football, had all these guys come over. And here he took over a program that was just a doormat. And now they took down, as far as 3-4 days ago, whatever it was, one of the big-time programs in the country. And so, again, the experts, for whatever it's worth, said, he was able to just pick some of these, primetime players that he was able to bring over, and, they made the difference as far as in getting that W. So, Brian, I know this past season, it was their best player ended up going to Nebraska. What's the Blue Jays?
Kansas.
Nope.
No.
Creighton. Creighton. Blue Jays. Yeah, there you go. Creighton. Mm-hmm. So that really was quite a blow as far as to lose your best player. But again, that program, as far as the amount of money, again, for those that don't know, now college players can get paid as far as for their likeness and all kinds of different ways to get around the rules and whatever. But bottom line, he was looking at on the doorstep of seven figures, and it's kind of hard to walk away from that. And up in the Dakotas, you're not going to be, they just don't have the appeal at this point yet, as far as their program doesn't have the I guess, from afar, as far as the company's willing to put out the money as far as for their program. So anyway, big picture. It's a new battle that they have, but everybody has it. So they have to go out. They got to compete, and it's putting extra heat as far as on some of the smaller programs, as far as to be able to attract some of the better players and not just get whatever's left.
Yeah, so. Transfer portal and name, image, likeness. Those are the two big things now in college sports. Certainly loyalty. You talk about that. I would imagine. In your line of work, you have people that you've been loyal to for years.
Sure. Yeah, it's. I had a conversation literally last night at 5:30. It started an appointment with somebody up in Minnesota, and they live in Savage, Minnesota, which is just south of the Twin Cities. And we started trying to do the math, and I didn't have it in front of me, but, I've been at this 42 years, and I think they're with me, give or take, 39 to 40 years. I mean, right from the beginning. So loyalty is an important thing, and it works both ways. As I discussed with them as they're laying compliments, the family had a powwow. Dad's getting a little older and needs some help as far as in some of the stuff. So a couple of kids were on as well, and the compliments were coming my direction, but in return, the reality is that this was one of the early believers in me, and subsequently, I was, as I tell people, I went from looking about 10 or 12 to 40 overnight, and, here I'm 10, 12 years old. This guy's looking at me, and he says, I'll take a chance on you, and it's been a great relationship that we've had, and so bottom line, loyalty is important, and loyalty in the sports world, I don't know if it exists anymore. It's going to be a tough one. There's so much money at stake. As I was coming in this morning, I was chatting with somebody just prior to coming up here, and it was on football and how much football is demanding these days as far as, the stations to show the games and what have you. I mean, the money that's being thrown around in the football arena is just absolutely staggering. Primarily college, but I guess pro is pretty significant too as far as what they've been, demanding for years. But college is now demanding more and more.
And the way the conferences are becoming now just super conferences. I mean, the ACC taking on a couple more of the Pac-12 schools.
Isn't that something?
It's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? There was the piece in Wall Street Journal. This was, and I read it probably about 2 months ago, but I'll give you the meat and potatoes as far as what came out of it. We hear about how much money the football programs generate for schools and how that then basically supports a lot of other sports. And the Wall Street Journal looked at the top 20 schools and tore that concept apart. It said it's not true. The tuitions have gone up, in 5 years, 64%. And the top 20 schools, it's gone up that much. And they're saying that it's the sports programs are spending more than they bring in. Subsequently, we're going after the other individuals. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it. And your example is a good one. I talk to people in terms of the Big Ten, UCLA out to Rutgers, as far as in New York, for those that don't know. I mean, are you kidding me? And we're going to send, a golf program, 5 golfers or whatever, put them on a plane, fly them out there. Nothing against golf. I love golf. I play golf. But it doesn't generate a lot of money. There's not a lot of revenue there. And how about track? And how about softball? And how about a lot of these programs that really don't generate anything? And so it's being reinforced now as far as with these massive, conferences, as you said. And I think the number was, I think I have this right, that when UCLA and USC came to the Big Ten, I think it was $100 million that was promised to each one of those schools as far as coming in the conference. I mean, it's staggering sums of money, but then you think about the staggering sums of money that it costs to maintain these programs and all the heads that are involved. Iowa, there was a piece on Channel 4 News as far as this past week, I guess it was, and how many bodies it takes to set up as far as for a game day, as far as a home game, how many people are involved. I'm just talking about for the team, not in the stadium, just the team itself. And so, yikes, so I don't know. I mean, I don't know. The Journal, I mean, they tried to document everything, and their conclusion was false. And I had heard years ago from the voice of the Hawks, I was playing golf with him, and he made the point of saying, people are on the coaches, Kurt's back as far as what he's getting paid, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going back 5 years ago, probably when this took place. And he said it brings in this much money, and I think the number was $90 million, and he was getting paid whatever. I'm going to say 3, 5. I can't remember the number now. But anyway, then all that extra money. Well, I guess there isn't all that extra money when it's all said and done. But that's the top 20 programs. Iowa could be different. I don't know. But the end result is it's not generating what people have believed for a number of years, and I was one of them.
Visiting with Dave Nelson, you brought up the Wall Street Journal. I've always found that to be an interesting paper because it's not just all business.
Yes.
They expand to sports and other areas.
They really have. They've done a nice job. If you go back 10 years ago, I would tell people, I'm lying. It's probably more like 15 years ago. It was pretty much a waste of time for most individuals as far as to read. Today, as you said, there's articles, and I would point people to IBD, Investor Business Daily. I thought that was the preferred newspaper as far as back in the day, because again, it didn't just give you data. Anybody can say, well, John Deere stock was up 1% today. Big deal. Is it something I should be considering as far as potentially, going into this particular stock? Why? Give me some of the rationale, whatever. And now they're doing a much better job in that area. Investor Business Daily is very good about that. The other thing they did that I really like is they spent a lot of time on just market direction. And I think that that's really key for many people. We call it the macro look, which is basically our approach. If you can get the macro call correct, it doesn't really matter what you buy, because when the macro call is even close to being correct, most of the stocks are going to move in a similar direction. Large, mid, small, international, domestic, doesn't matter. They're going to kind of all move in sync. But it's getting that call correct is what's really difficult. And so what they did is they basically had a method that they believed was going to consistently get you in the right direction. Again, nothing's perfect, folks. I mean, I bring up all the time to clients as far as somebody takes a plane and they shove it into a big building again like we did in New York City years ago. All bets are off as far as that point in time. There's no system that can anticipate something like that. But throw that out of the equation, which is a rare event, and look at the facts. Again, they would look at the market, study the market, and again, find patterns that would historically work to get you in the right direction. And then, maybe you go an index then at that point in time and buy the NASDAQ, or you buy the S&P 500 or the Dow or whatever, and you can do quite well as far as with that. So the Wall Street Journal has come around, and they're doing more of that type of stuff. And as you said, it's not just all business. They have a broad look at the world and share their opinions, and more often than not, it's pretty valuable information.
Visiting with Dave Nelson before we take a break for the weather. You mentioned the Wall Street Journal. Is there a journalist or two that you like to read?
Yeah, from the Wall Street Journal, not so much. As far as from Investor Business Daily, the answer is yes. Mm-hmm. And I got to be careful on how I word this too, but years ago I had somebody wander in the door and they handed me a money magazine and said, here's what I want to do. Here, this person wrote about these particular mutual funds in that context. And I said, do you understand, as far as the author of this particular article that you're referencing, what their previous job was? The answer was popular mechanics. So they were a great writer, but they weren't necessarily insightful as far as finding that combination is really difficult. Somebody that gets finance, but also understands how to write where people can understand and do something with it.
Popular mechanics. Very good. Check of the weather now being brought to you by Citizens First Bank.
For your Wednesday, we'll be tracking more clouds, a little bit more wind, and much cooler temperatures. Highs today only in the mid to upper 70s. Tonight, partly cloudy, down to the cool upper 50s. And for Thursday, mid 70s as some sunshine returns. With your WQAD Storm Track 8 forecast, I'm meteorologist Andrew Stutzky.
Clear skies, west winds. We've made it to 73 degrees. Our update brought to you by Citizens First Bank.
Citizens First Bank Cash Rewards Checking is our most popular account for a reason. It's simple, easy to use, and can help you take your finances to the next level. Simply do your spending and earn cash rewards. Achieve your personal financial goals with rewards checking. Banking as it should be at Citizens First Bank. Visit our digital branch at gocfb.bank or one of our convenient locations. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Well, it is the first Wednesday, so we're going to go to the bottom of the hour live with Dave Nelson of NelsonCorp Wealth Management. So what's on schedule here in the second half?
Something really exciting.
It always is.
It always is. It's important, and I want to bring it up. I've had numerous conversations with people in recent times. They've read articles talking about interest rates going up and, as far as what impact that has on bonds. And are we getting close? Should we be looking at buying some bonds? And like always, folks, I'm going to talk in very generic terms. I don't want to go to jail. It's really difficult in my line of work to have, really direct conversations as far as with this in this type of forum. I can do that one-on-one with clients, but I got to be careful here. So bear with me. I want you to get the concept of this. And so I use the term oftentimes as far as the way bonds work is like a teeter-totter. So when interest rates go up, the value of your bond goes down and vice versa. So I started back in 1981, and back in 1981, you could buy a bond, you could buy a CD that was paying 16%. Hard to believe, but it's true. 16% back in the day. And then we went for a period of time where it was pretty much a steady drop. And let's basically rewind things maybe 2 years ago. 2 years ago, you're pretty much looking at pretty close to zero as far as with that same money. So 16% made its way down, not a straight line down, but it went down. And as interest rates went down, the value of your bond did what? It went up. It's the other side of the teeter-totter. So that was really, really good stuff. People were making all kinds of money as far as owning bonds in that environment. But now we're in a different environment. And this environment, basically, the Federal Reserve has intervened, trying to slow down the economy. People say, well, why are they doing that? Again, as simply as I can state this, the reason they're doing that is inflation really is difficult for individuals across the board, but more specifically, it's really hard on people on the low end as far as low-income earners. It's really tough. So the Fed's trying to slow it down. Why did this happen in the first place, that interest rates or that inflation took off as much as it did? That goes back to a lot of the COVID-type cures, and it goes back to 07, 08 cures, to that massive pullback that we had back then. If you don't remember, the stock market, the S&P 500, dropped 58% in 07, 08, 09, from peak to trough, 58%. So the government intervened, put some money into the system to try to calm things down, try to keep people out spending money, keep the economy going. So it probably a necessary thing. None of us know for certain, but I'll say it was a necessary thing. And it's continued. And so it continued, and it basically underneath created this inflation problem that we're now dealing with. So the Federal Reserve the last couple of years has basically embarked on, hey, we got to crush inflation. And the way that historically that works is you raise interest rates to try to slow things down. And so hopefully by raising rates, it makes the average person out there less willing to go out and borrow money to do whatever, buy a new car, whatever. So again, the goal being slowing it down. Well, it's worked, and things have slowed down a fair amount. The increases, if you don't know, is north of 5%. We went from essentially 0 to north of 5% as far as these increases. And so that's been rough on certain asset classes. So I'll give you a very specific number. So this is a pool of long-term government bonds that in 2022, so last year, we're down 31%. So these are U.S. guaranteed government bonds, down 31% last year. The year before that, they were down 5%. This year, they're down 2%. So again, you look at this, you're saying 40% of your money, if you had started, say, 2.5 years ago, give or take, today you have 40% less money than what you had. So that's the long end, and that's where lots of people, unfortunately, found themselves, and they were crushed. Let's go to the short end, and then I'll zip it and let you jump in here, Gary, if you want me to expand on something. So if we look at the short end, so this would be 1 to 3 year government bonds. Last year, when the long-term bonds were down 31%, short bonds were down 4%. You think there's a difference in bonds? That's one of the problems that we have when people generically start talking about bonds. There's literally hundreds of thousands of different bonds that are out there today that a person could buy if they wanted to. And so sorting through this mess is difficult as far as what bond do I want, what quality is it, what's the maturity, how many more years is it out, what interest rates is it currently paying, what kind of shape is that particular county in that issued that bond. Those are really important variables as far as in making this decision. So there's a massive difference, and I haven't even gone to the corporate world because the corporate bonds are now a whole different animal as well, that being that they're not so sensitive to interest rate adjustments as they are to just the fear of this corporation not being able to pay its bills. So in other words, maybe going out of business. So you have that variable you have to bring in there too. So it's a complicated world. And I think too often people generalize. It's kind of like, what did the market do today? What market? What market are you referencing? And the bond market is very much the same thing, except it's more magnified because there's hundreds of thousands, not just thousands, hundreds of thousands of bonds that are out there.
I did not realize that.
Yes.
I mean, that is information that is just mind-boggling.
It is, and you just look at it locally here. How many bonds has the city of Clinton issued? I mean, again, through the years. And so most of these bonds aren't a year or 2 years. They're 5-year, 20-year, 30-year type bonds. And so the University of Iowa, how many bonds have they issued through the years? Iowa State, et cetera, et cetera. Just in the state of Iowa, there's tens of thousands of bonds that are out there. Cities, states, counties, et cetera, that have had bond referendums. And again, we've done it with schools as far as in town here. Is the city of Clinton good for the money? Should I buy this bond? Should I not buy this bond? Those are the tough decisions. And so when we get in the bond arena periodically, again, people read articles that'll talk about, well, when you buy a cluster like that, again, you've got less control, and the bottom line is you could see the value of that investment go down. And my response is, well, it owns bonds, so the bottom line is at some point those bonds are going to come due, and we'll see this ratcheting up. It's kind of an illogical argument. It's on the surface, people kind of try to back it up, but I said, let's say you're even right. How do you make the decision on what bonds to own? And again, a lot of these investment entities that are out there, they've got PhDs coming out their ears. I'm not saying these people make every decision they make is right, but I'm saying they've got the time and they have the research and the resources as far as to try to investigate. And I guarantee you one thing, they're going to be right more than the average person on the street. And so again, it just comes back to a little common sense comes into play with buying any type of investment. And we have to have a rational hat on, not our irrational hat or emotional hat on. It's got to be a very thoughtful process that we go through as far as what we want to put in our portfolio, because again, I'm dependent upon that decision basically yielding me some type of return during retirement. And if they go kaputzi, I'm in probably deep trouble at that point in time. And so the average person shouldn't, my opinion, probably shouldn't take that risk of buying a lot of individual issues on their own.
You mentioned portfolio, and you always talk about diversity in that portfolio. How do you put together something like that?
It's tough, and it's not, you hear people talk about all the time that kind of the benchmark for most individuals is 60-40, 60% stocks, 40% bonds and cash. And that's kind of the starting spot as far as for most advisors. I don't buy into that. It's kind of like individuals saying as I get older I should own bonds. I don't quite get that. Again, understanding the risk with bonds and understanding the potential for return with bonds is pretty low. So again, when you lose 30%, as I described earlier, in 1 year in a long-term government bond, the yield on that, Gary, is 4%. So 4%, 4%, 4%. Do the math. How long is it going to take as far as for me to get close to getting my money back? That's what people don't understand. So when you invest in bonds, and I'm saying for most individuals, they probably should have some bonds in their portfolio. It's just a question of how much. So assembling that is tough. So we have all the tools as far as that the industry basically brings to the table. I'll use the one through the CFP board. It's 6, so CFP, Certified Financial Planner, so this is kind of the creme la creme, folks, the best of the best. And it's a 6-question questionnaire, and we slide it in front of you, and you check the box as far as on what type of risk taker you are. And those questions lead me to the exact answer that's going to make you happy for the rest of your life. I mean, it's just ridiculous as far as to think about that. So what we do is we start with how much pain can a person take. So I take my arm and I put it behind my back, and like somebody, the uncle used to do, when do you say uncle? At what point? And for most people, it's 10 or 15%. Well, that questionnaire doesn't give me that answer as far as to that. And oh, by the way, the other thing, if I hand you that questionnaire today and the market is exploding on the upside, you're probably going to answer that questionnaire a little more aggressively than you probably would have otherwise. And vice versa. The market's down 58%. I slide that sucker in front of you. You look at me and you say something like, what are you, stupid or something? I want to bury my money in the backyard. Both of which is the exact wrong time. So we got to get the emotion out of it. And that's why it's an ongoing relationship with people, because today you may feel good about investing and tomorrow something happened and you may feel rotten about it. So you have to have that coach that's there to get you from A to B safely, and to be there to hold your hand when needed, and basically to slap your hand at times and say, no, you're not going to do that.
Here we are. Of course, it is September, so we're getting into the last quarter of the year. Bring out the crystal ball. What do you think?
We're still cautious as far as this year. We have been. So again, for part of the year, we've been wrong. Just put that out there. After last year, it's a rough year. Markets oftentimes rally back in an environment like that. But it's a tough call. Generically, I'll say as far as the market, if we hold on to what we have so far this year, I would be pretty happy as far as with that. I don't know if everybody else would be, but I think that that's reasonable as far as where we are today. Looking outside the U.S. is where most of the opportunities really lie. It's just a question of at what point and what's the dollar going to do. So we're big fans of certain investments globally. Again, I can't go into any great detail here. I apologize. But I will say, generically speaking, look outside the U.S. as well as the U.S. Don't walk away from the U.S. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in the rearview mirror, the U.S. has been the exact place to be with almost no international exposure, which has basically been our position for 6-7 years now. It's starting to change in that regard. Opportunities are starting to arise as far as globally, but they're not quite there yet, but we're getting closer.
Always great to have you in studio. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thanks, Gary.
Financial Focus is a production of NelsonCorp Wealth Management in Clinton and Davenport. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Any indices mentioned are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Registered representative, securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and NelsonCorp Wealth Management are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax advice. For more information, visit our website at www.nelsoncorp.com.